Thank you, Eli. And we will move on now to our last speaker before we start a panel. And Michael Benham is strategic planner with AATA, and he's working on a lot of strategic plans at AATA, I can tell you that.
Hi, I'm Michael Benham, and thank you for having me here tonight. The topic tonight is the relationship between transit and sustainability. You may know some of our services. We provide fixed route bus service throughout the city, also dial ride service. And then we've got a number of specialized services as arrayed on the screen here before you. Some of you may know about a recent effort that we undertook called Countywide Transit, and that was an effort to create a countywide transit system throughout Washtenaw County. We published a 30-year countywide plan. We organized a kind of a temporary countywide transit board, and we actually began the process, or we went through the process of incorporating a regional countywide transit authority. For a number of reasons, that process really kind of came apart. I think it was a situation of the county wasn't quite ready for countywide transit, but we learned a lot. We talked to a lot of people, and I think that we laid the groundwork for a lot of future efforts. There are still people out there who are asking us for services. That whole effort really got started because people were coming to us. There's a real lack of transit throughout Washtenaw County. But at any rate, we learned, I think, that perhaps we overreached a little bit and now have a new focus. In fact, the Countywide Transit Authority actually got officially dissolved yesterday by the county board. But we've been busy really focusing now on the urban core. And part of this came about as a result of a city council resolution back in November asking us to really focus on the urban core, that being the city of Ann Arbor, the city of Ypsilanti, and some of the adjacent townships. And so we've kind of regrouped, and we're now asking the question of all of these jurisdictions, what is it exactly that you want out there? We began with the question about service, and we said, you know, we can sustain the service that we have basically with probably very little increase in funding. Is that what you want? We ask, you know, we could improve the service that we have within the footprint of the existing service area. Is that what you want? And of course, that would cost some money. And then we ask the question, or do you want us to expand beyond the boundaries of the current service footprint and really start reaching out into those areas that have been growing while the transit system has remained relatively stable in terms of its footprint? We had a meeting on March 28th where we got a pretty clear signal from folks that they wanted us to both improve and expand the system. Now that was it's easy to ask for that and assume away issues like funding and representation. So I would call that a conditional statement that you know, people would like to have improvements, they'd like to have expansion, but subject to that being financially and organizationally acceptable. So a little bit about that service plan that we put in front of people. And we'll focus on the improve sections of that plan first and then talk about the expansion. But here we're talking about the existing system, and by and large it's not new lines on the map. It is oftentimes, rather than new lines on the map, it's increased frequency, it's later services, it's weekend services where none now exist. In some cases, we've reconfigured these lines on the map so that there's more direct service, more in different places being served. This is the western edge of Ann Arbor, and all of those lettered services. And I realize some of this is hard to see, and please contact me after this, and I'll be happy to share the copy of this plan with you. In terms of the services between the two big cities, Ann Arbor and Ypsi, and I know Nathan mentioned the route number 4, and we got a little bit of a jump on that, and we've doubled the service on that, and had overnight we had a 28% increase in ridership on that service. We've also increased night ride service. That's the service where you can get a cab ride after the fixed route system is closed down. If you're a worker in Ann Arbor and you're not getting off till midnight and you want to get back to where you live, perhaps in Ypsi, you can take that service. We've increased the extent of that service into Ypsilanti. Again, the ridership has just increased tremendously. So we're proposing a number of additional service improvements, again, frequencies, evenings, weekends on those services that travel between the two cities. And then if you get over into east side, Ypsilanti, Ypsi Township, a lot of improvements there. If you know the services there, they've always been relatively sparser, if you will, compared to the services within Ann Arbor proper. So we'd be adding some additional routes here, as well as, again, frequency and increased evening service and weekend service where none exists. And then getting out into the townships, this is where we talk about expansion now, not just improvements within the existing footprint. Getting out into the townships, you can see that we've got some new extended routes that are proposed. We've got some park and rides, new park and rides proposed, which those have always been a really good way to kind of cut people off outside of the urban core, or outside, I should say, the downtown Ann Arbor area. If people will drive to that park and ride, then they can take the bus system and get into town the rest of the way without having to deal with traffic or adding to traffic. So we've got some of that planned. And then last but not least, there's a township-wide dial ride service. Ann Arbor residents have enjoyed for years a dial ride service that covers the entire city, and that also applies pretty much to Ypsilanti. But out in the townships, those services have been very sketchy or non-existent. So we're offering that as a way to get around within those communities, as well as a way to connect the communities into the center of the urban core. Also looking at Pittsfield Township and Saline, again, basically the same sets of services. We've got some new or extended routes of our fixed route service into those areas. We've got some express ride services that actually connect those areas on a nonstop basis into the heart of the city, and then the township-wide dial ride services. So it's easy to talk about service. There are two other elements, though, that are a little bit more tricky to talk about, but they're absolutely necessary if we're going to actually have these services on the street. And those two topics are governance and funding. And you know, the services, they don't come free, so if you want to expand the service, funding has to be expanded. And if you expand the service area, then you need to start bringing other communities into that, the governance or organization of that service. So, as I said, we had this conversation about a month ago with our Urban Core Working Group, pretty much agreed on the service plan as an aspirational thing. The next step here now is to start talking about governance. We are taking the approach of arraying the possibilities to the communities without being really prescriptive. It's really up to the communities how they want to get involved in this process and how they want to organize themselves to govern transit. Right now we have purchase of service agreements between Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, Pittsfield, and Ypsi Township. And basically what they're doing is on a year-to-year basis, they're buying the service from us. But there have been ideas floated out there that talk about maybe expanding the authority to a 5-jurisdiction authority, or maybe something in between where the authority expands incrementally and continues to have these POSAs, these purchase service agreements with the other communities. In fact, I just came from the board meeting upstairs, and the city of Ypsilanti there spoke to our board and told us that they would be requesting permission to join the authority next week. So that's a big development. We've got another meeting scheduled with the Urban Core Transit Working Group next week, and we'll be talking about these governance possibilities and see if we can settle on something that makes sense in the near term, but recognizing it's an incremental approach. The last thing, of course, is funding, and this, as soon as you start talking about people's pocketbooks, it gets very sensitive, very political, but the services do cost money. We tested the attitude of voters in this county for for their attitudes toward transit and towards additional funding for transit, and as you can see by the middle column, in the depths of the recession, this survey was taken November 2011, we got an amazingly high response, positive response for the possibility of a $1 property tax to fund transit. So we think there's reason for optimism out there, but again, we think it's up to the communities to have the final word on this, and we'll be having those discussions as we go along. So why do we do this? Why bother to worry about the transit system at all? Well, as population has grown over the years, vehicle miles traveled has grown even more, and we all know the issues with that. So what can transit do to help? This is some information from an AATA publication. It was compiled by ICF International. And they basically looked at what's transit doing today to help us be sustainable in terms of reducing energy use and also reducing greenhouse gas emissions. They even went further, though. They got kind of visionary, and they said, what if we could grow transit by 10% a year? What would be the impact of that? And you can see here what the estimated results would be. Within 30 years, we could save almost 100 billion gallons of fuel a year, which is equal to about what the transportation sector consumes today for transportation. So, and then also about a cutting in half of transportation sector carbon emissions. So we feel real strongly that we can make our contribution towards this very ambitious vision, and I hope you'll support us as we move forward in this. This is kind of a graphical depiction of what might be in a transit-oriented future. We talked about a transit-oriented community, and these are some of the potential impacts in terms of energy use and greenhouse gas reductions. So hopefully one of these days we'll see many more people riding many fewer vehicles here, and we'll thank you for your support of transit.